Welcome back. It's week 4, quality of feedback, and you're just in time to check in on Mr. Good Coach and Miss McRookie. Let's see what they're talking about in their coaching session.
Okay, Ms. McRookie, great class. I love what's happening in there. You feel good?
Yeah, I feel very good. I'm still feeling a little bit in the weeds, but I really love the kids, so I'm just powering through it.
You know, I've told you this before, but I really like your attitude. You're going to come out of the weeds soon. Kids are mostly really on task. You're really messaging how important each minute is by responding whenever someone's attention is wandering. I counted 6 separate occasions when you noticed someone whose focus was off. Just when I did, and you responded. That's great. I also noticed you were using proximity, like we talked about. Your tone, when you had to remind Alex to keep his head up off the desk, and then you gave him a demerit, tone was great. We've talked a lot about being firm but dispassionate, and you were really using that here. You've been practicing, I can tell. I wasn't too sure about the target task today. I think you were a little ambitious. It's a really complicated thing that you're introducing, and you gave them every step for the first time today. I think it might have been hard to follow. What I recommend is going home and scripting out every single level of that problem, how you would do it, what goes through your head, the whole narrative. I'm talking crazy detail. You follow me?
Yeah, because that's going to help me.
Okay, one other thing. I want to have a detailed discussion with you about how you give feedback to students when they give you a partially correct answer.
Oh man, I never know what to say.
Right, it's tricky, but let me give you some advice. And then...
Alright, I bet you can see this one coming, but we're not totally satisfied by everything that we see in this coaching session here. No question that Mr. Good Coach, he's using the Kraken, there's a clear instructional vision, they're on the same page, lots of common language for talking about instruction, and that's all terrific. And Ms. McRookie, she continues to have great growth mindset about her practice. She's asking questions, she's really digging into the feedback. However, if we look at the session again, there are 2 big principles of quality feedback that are missing here. Number 1 is goal-driven accountability. One goal, holding the teacher accountable to implementing that goal, giving them the support and the tools they need to implement it effectively, one focus area at a time. If you notice, Mr. Good Coach gave Ms. McRookie a ton of advice across all those different categories of the Kraken, and we just don't think there's any way she'll be able to keep all of that in mind while also planning and executing a new lesson. The second principle is that coaching sessions should be forward-looking. You should think about your coaching session as a planning session for how to implement specific changes. If you notice, most of the coaching session you saw there was rehashing what already took place in the classroom. We believe that a coaching session should look forward to future lessons and to helping a teacher figure out how they're going to implement feedback in the context of those lessons. Okay, first principle. So why is it that we think that a teacher should only work on one well-chosen, high-leverage skill at a time? Well, for those of you who took our rookie teaching course, this next clip is going to look really familiar to you. We want you to watch 30 seconds that'll look like 30 fairly ordinary seconds of instruction and try to count how many decisions this teacher is making.
F of x equals x. Draw your coordinate plane and graph it up. Should take you no more than 30 seconds to do. Okay, some of you got it, some of you didn't. Your graph should look like this, yes?
Alright, here are the decisions that we counted.
F of x equals x. Draw your coordinate plane and graph it up. Should take you no more than 30 seconds to do. Okay, some of you got it, some of you didn't. Your graph should look like this, yes?
Wow, that's a ton of brain activity for just 30 seconds of instruction. Imagine what that looks like across the entire class, all those decisions a teacher has to make. Now, imagine on top of that, you're also asking the teacher to do something new, to implement a new skill. Well, we all know that when we're doing something for the first time, when we're not good at it yet, it takes a ton of our concentration. And this is mental bandwidth that a teacher really doesn't have much of. Just to get through the lesson, you're making so many decisions, you're using so much of your brain that you just don't have much left over to think about something new. And that's why we say to only focus on one skill at a time. If you're now executing that lesson and thinking about 2 new things that you want to change, we just think it's teacher brain overload. It's a recipe for disaster. At the very least, it's a recipe for a teacher not being able to implement a coach's feedback effectively. Okay, principle 2. Coaching sessions should be forward-looking. If you think back on the coaching session with Mr. Good Coach and Miss McRookie, pretty much the entire session focused on a lesson that already took place. They just rehashed something that already happened. We think that's totally off. In fact, in a 30-minute coaching session, we believe only 5 or 10 minutes should be spent reviewing a previous lesson, and the next 20 should be looking forward toward how to implement a new skill in the context of a new lesson. That's a 2-to-1 ratio in favor of the future over the past. If there's just one thing that you take away from this entire MOOC, it's that. Change the ratio of your coaching sessions to have them be more forward-looking, and it will cause you to shrink your goals in a really productive way. But don't just spend the time talking about the future. Actually practice for the future that you want to exist. That means get the teacher to stand up, rehearse that skill in front of you, give them real-time, immediate feedback, model it for the teacher if need be, script things into their lesson plan, really look forward toward how they're going to implement that feedback. Don't just have a conversation about it. Why? Well, as much as you might want to intervene in the moment, you can't. You can't do this.
All right, what did you get for number 1?
CC.
Okay, Makai?
X equals,
Time out, coach.
You had it. You had it. You had it.
I know.
You asked the question, the student said, I don't know, and you let her off the hook.
Yeah, but it's so hard to know what to do when they say that.
I know, but we've talked about this. I'm going to draw it up for you again. Ready?
All right.
This is what it looks like. She says, I don't know.
Okay, so that might have been a bit of an overstatement, but the point is, teachers are going to have to implement your feedback on their own. You want to spend most of the precious time that you do have with them making sure that they're ready for that implementation. And that means creating practice in your coaching sessions. And even when you are in the classroom, you can't just jump in if things aren't going well. I mean, you're not like a head surgeon who's working with an apprentice that's holding the scalpel in the wrong place. The teacher ultimately has to execute these skills on their own. And that's why you should spend the majority of your session getting them to begin that process of executing so you can give that real-time feedback. You can create real action steps that they can then go and take on their own. Remember your Willingham. The more you practice something, the more you commit it to memory, the more likely you're going to be able to execute it independently. Taken together, these 2 principles imply a rather directive approach to giving feedback to teachers. After all, it's the coach who's ultimately choosing the goals, creating the opportunities for practice, and driving accountability throughout the process. But teaching is a solitary act. In fact, lots of you coaches probably will only get a chance to see your teachers a few times across the entire year. So ultimately, your teachers need to learn how to be reflective. They need to learn how to ask and answer their own questions about their own practice. We still think that our directive approach gives teachers a good framework for becoming reflective, but becoming reflective in an efficient way. The goal here is not just to reflect, the goal is to reflect on your practice in a way that will drive real improvements. So with our approach, a teacher would learn to reflect in the context of a vision for excellent instruction. They would know that they should just choose one thing to focus on. They would know that they should script and practice and rehearse before they try to implement new skills in the classroom. They would know that they need to hold themselves accountable to how well they implement the feedback that they're giving to themselves. All of these parameters for reflection will actually create reflective practitioners who are focused on real meaningful changes in the classroom. Whew, that was a lot. To make up for all this theoretical opining, in our next video we promise to be super directive. We're going to walk you through the components of an effective coaching session. See you there.